Hi everyone, thanks for taking the time to watch the video that accompanies this month's Geospatial Tip of the Month. In this short video, we're going to take a look at the process of loading imagery into ArcGIS using IMD and .TIL files. So without further ado, let's get started here. So first I'm going to show you loading a single TIFF file, one that hasn't been tiled, by using the IMD file. First thing we're going to do is we're going to go up and we're going to add a file the traditional method, so to speak. So I have my samples in here. We'll go into this single file folder. And traditionally, most people would use the .TIFF file, which definitely works in ArcGIS, as I'll show you here. And it comes in, and everything looks just fine. Now I'm going to show you the difference of what happens when you actually load it with the IMD file and the metadata that comes accompanied with it. So the IMD file ends in .imd right here. And just press the Add button. And you can see there's a slightly different naming convention between the two. It's adding the multispectral tag ahead of the name. So pretty similar there, but this is really where the difference comes. So let me right click on the file that I loaded without the IMD file, the traditional TIFF, go to the properties, and take a look at the key metadata, and you'll see that there's very little here. Basically all it knows is that it has 3 bands, and that's pretty much it. Now if you take a look at the one we loaded with the IMD file, you're going to see a much more robust metadata. You're going to see the sensor name, you're going to see the product types, you're going to see a bunch of information about the collection geometries, the wavelengths in millimeters, max mins, all kinds of information that could be important as you're working with this data in the future and easier to find than having to go back into this image metadata files in text format. Now let me show you what happens when we try to load a tiled file. I'll go ahead and get a new session just to make it easier. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to load those individual tiles like you traditionally might have done in the past. Now the version I have here only has 4 tiles, R1C1, R1C2, R2C1, R2C2. In case you're wondering, R stands for row, column, or C stands for column. So in the past you might have either grabbed one at a time, or you can grab all 4 by pressing Shift. If you have 100 tiles, it's easy to press and load them at the same time, but this is what ends up happening. Imagine having 100 files loaded in your table of contents and having to scroll down all the way through them. Pretty cumbersome process. Now let me show you the same thing here, but just using the .TIL file, which is right here. It's a single file. Just press the Add button, and instantly you're good to go. You'll see that there's a little bit of difference in naming convention. R1C1 has been added, and R1C2, so forth, has been added to when we added the individual tiles. Whereas when you add it with the .TIL file, you actually just get a much more condensed name. Now, I think that's one of the most important things actually is not so much the process of loading, but in terms of image consistency. And what you can see here is because we've loaded it as a TIL file, that there's no breaks across the image. You can't tell where the different rows and columns are, so it's applying an even color balance across the image. That can be really important if you're loading raw data that's been tiled and you want to create a nice consistent image inside of Arc doing color balance. Now take a look at what happened when we loaded it by .TIL file, or I'm sorry, by loading it by traditional tiles. You can see that each one of the tiles has its own color balance. There would really be no way for you then, with these files loaded in this format, to actually make a nice consistent image, a nice consistent color across these 4 different tiles. Whereas as I mentioned, if you turn this back on, once again, you can see how this is just a consistent file. There's no breaks, and if you wanted to apply color balance, as I will just do really quickly here for you, it's really easy to do. As you can see, it applies it across the entire image with no problem. Whereas if I went into these individual files and I apply an ESRI clip here, you can see it's up here, and then I go into here and I do the same, it's going to be a slightly different color. It's not too different, but you can still see that line that goes up and down it. And if you're trying to for the best image, then you want to go with the .TIL file. Let me just show you one last thing before we get done with this quick video, which admittedly is a little bit quicker than my normal ones. The directions that come with ArcGIS make it sound like you can load a tiled file using the IMD file, and it would instantly load with the metadata and all the 4 tiles. In my experience, that fails, and let me just show you what happens. You get an invalid raster dataset, failed to create raster layer. I've tried multiple different ways of getting around that error, Haven't found a solution for it yet? If those of you out in the internet world who are watching this video have a solution, feel free to leave a comment on our GFAQ or our GTIP page or on the YouTube page where you might be watching this video. Thanks for your time.